Overtriggers might be one thing, but probably the most controversial part that came out of the announcement of Overdress is probably this image. The fact that we're going to get 3 different formats is something else. But is this a bad thing, or is it potentially something really good for the game? This is something that we need to discuss today.
Stand up! Vanguard!
So we are quite familiar with all the new updates for Overdress. You probably have seen countless of videos, and even I touched upon this particular topic. And as discussed in yesterday's video, we first went over the overtriggers, and today I want to go over the second more controversial topic, which is of course the new announcement about the extra addition to our format system. And this has some implications for future potential of card designs, set designs, as well as probably more important one, tournament structure. And this of course gives a lot of confusion in the community if the whole split in 3 formats is going to be good for the game and longevity, is your format going to be supported and whatnot, and all those kinds of questions. It's very logical that people will want to have answers to those questions to see where they want to go once May rolls around. And hopefully this video will clarify certain points about this new update to the game, as well as hopefully gives you a better starting point for the choice that you're going to make for which format you want to play, or maybe stick with multiple formats at a single time. So to understand and clarify what this actually will mean for the game is, let's take a look at what we have right now. Currently, we have 2 formats. We have Standard, which is basically V series, and we have Premium, which encompasses everything that we ever got. And this has been the case for the last 3 years, ever since the reboot happened, and we have seen how they supported this. We have premium exclusive products around once a year, and then Standard is just your typical support. And during every tournament structure or tournament season, both, or at least in most cases at most regionals, we see both formats getting a singular day tournament support, or just a tournament setting itself. So one day we have Standard, and the second day we have Premium. This has been the case ever since the reboot started. Now, going forward during the Overdress era, they're basically going to do the exact same thing that we have right now, but they add an extra format on top of that. Because yes, we might now have Premium, V Premium, and Standard, but actually the only thing that they did is add a new Standard on top of everything. Because Premium that we have right now is going to stay Premium. It's going to be the exact same thing that we have the last 3 years. Same as with the current Standard format that we have right now, it basically stays the same because you can only play V series cards. This is going to be the case for the future, and this is the case right now. So that format also doesn't change. The way how you play your decks, the way how strategies work with gift markers, that will stay the same. The only thing that they add on top of that is the third format, which can only play with overdressed cards, which makes sense because we have this whole new nation system. So in terms of how formats are going to be played and if your cards are going to be valid or not, in the short answer is they will be the same, because you can still play the cards. This format will stay the same. They just add a extra format on top of that that doesn't interfere with what we already have right now. Same as that if we go to Magic and the fan base or the player base just created Commander. The fact that Commander is being created as another format doesn't take away from Modern, Standard, or whatever other format legacy that they might have. This is the same with what we have here in Vanguard. Now, of course, the question then arises, are we going to get support sets, or are Bushiroad actually going to support those sets? The answer is yes, and we can actually confirm this because Bushiroad already announced specific support for not only the Standard Overdress format, but also for the V-Series format, basically V Premium, but let's just keep it as the V-Series. They announced that they're going to support that format at least twice a year, which is even more than Premium has right now. And we saw that they also confirmed a Premium set for currently right now only English exclusive. Might come to Japan, but that's nothing confirmed just yet. So what we know so far is that they're going to support every single format in the game. That is a good sign. Now, the only issue is, which also a lot of people have been voicing, is that how will this play out in tournaments themselves? Because yes, if we're gonna be logical, Bushiroad has the space and times to actually host tournaments for 3 different formats, because Buddy Fight got cancelled, which means the Buddy Fight time slots on tournaments will be opened up for this new format for Vanguard. So you could basically put this into that slot. The only issue is here is that this means that at least on one day, people have to make a choice if they want to pick one of the formats over the other. And this can either be that Standard is going to be on the same day with V Premium, or maybe Premium is going to be on the same day with V Standard or V Series. So this can be the issue that players might have to pick and choose which format. So this is probably the best argument for being against this system, is that this will probably affect tournament participant numbers, because players have to be split over multiple formats on the same day. So either Bushiroad will go with triple day for tournaments, but that's probably very unlikely, or we're going to see that maybe some regionals will only host 2 of the 3 formats at a time, and that's it. But then you get in a situation which format will get priority over the others. Currently, this is all just speculation. We don't know how Bushiroad is actually going to enforce this and how they're going to do the rulings around with the tournament structure about these triple formats. In the terms of actual physical card support, we are covered. We should see that Bushiroad actually are going to support these formats, and they have dedicated support sets themselves, which is actually a good thing. But the way that we don't know how they're going to do the tournament structure, this is where a lot of players are a bit iffy about, because they don't know if this actually will be good for their particular format, and seeing as the player base themselves is getting divided over multiple formats, this could be a bit tricky. But at the same time, I want to make a case that this could actually be a good thing for Vanguard in the long term, if we're going to look at the formats themselves. Because current Standard players, the reason why they want to make V Premium is because we have Standard players that joined Vanguard during the new reboot, and they want to give those players at least a chance to play the format that they come to accustom with. Because saying, well, your format is going to go to Premium, you're forced to play Premium, and the new Standard is just this, is kind of a dick move to those players. At least now they have a way to play the game. But I want to make an argument that this decision might actually be way more beneficial for Premium than Premium players might think. Because what we saw over the evolution of the V-Series is that at the beginning of the V-Series, we had Standard and we had Premium. And those 2 formats were very different from another. Especially since a lot of the strides and a lot of the strategies were very unique in the Premium format than in Standard, as Standard was basically a dumbed-down version of the game and it had gift markers. But as time went on and we saw more and more sets and Standard started to power creep on itself, we saw that Premium was incorporating way more standardized cards and strategies in their decks. And over time, they started to look a lot like Standard decks as well. And at some point, about, I think a year or 2 years into the reboot, the term was coined called Standard Plus. Because at some point, multiple Premium decks were effectively a Standard deck with a G-Zone attached to it. And in some cases, they were actually competitively viable, or even potential the top dogs in the format. And as more and more Standard happened and more of the set were power creeping it, this was becoming the more and more norm, and these formats were starting to look a lot like each other, even though they're supposed to be completely different. And if Bushiroad decided to go for an actual Standard reboot and everything from the V-Series will be rotated in Premium and the current Standard will be the new Overdress era, then what's to say that this would have happened again over the course of the coming foreseeable future with Overdress? Like, power creep will happen. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So that will meant that at some point the term Standard Plus deck will probably resurge in somewhere maybe in 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years again with Premium, which takes away from the Premium experience, because Premium is supposed to be something completely unique to Standard. But now that we have this triple format system and they're all going to get their own unique support, this basically cements that every single format will feel and experience and pilot completely different from each other. Because V-Series, V Premium, is just the current Standard with gift markers. That will be its own thing. Then Standard is, of course, the new Overdress era with Nations, which will 100% be something completely different than the current V-Series. But Premium, on the other hand, not only gets potential Premium collection support, which are Strides, G-Guardians and that kind of stuff, but now it also gets support from the new Overdress Standard era with all the Nation cards. but it will now also get support from the upcoming clan selection of V collection sets from the V series, which means their card pool is increased by different types of formats with different cards, which means their strategies and tactics will get a manglemoose of these different formats with gift markers, nation cards, these over triggers, then the new strides, and that will probably result in the fact that Premium will never be a V Series Plus or an Overdress Plus like deck. Maybe there will be a situation where it looks a bit more like one of the two formats because they got a really good new power creep card or some strategy that's really good for their clan, but it won't be the same scenario as we have right now in Standard, where basically every single clan slowly works towards a Standard Plus deck. Like Vanquisher, for example, Narukami is... You play a standard deck with a G-Sun attached to it. That's it. Neonectar, when Katrina was a thing, was very much a standard deck with a lot of their plant token generation, except for a couple of key cards that could help their deck to do a bit more attacks or something else. And thanks to this split in triple formats, or in these 3 different formats, this will probably never happen again, or at the very least not as obvious as it did in Standard. So that is probably, in my opinion, the saving grace of having these multiple format system, that at least these formats will feel, look, and experience completely different from one another than what happened during the V series, whereas the standard cards actually start to make way more impact in Premium than Premium cards themselves did. But of course, the main issue that players have is, are my cards going to attain value, and are the tournament structure going to support my particular format? Honestly, nobody has the actual answer to that question. The value of these cards are all dependent on the secondary market and how players feel about them. This has always been the case ever since the secondary market was created, because these values that we put to these cards are basically imaginary. If I think a card is worth something, then if I can find somebody that wants to sell me for that number, then that card is that worth. But in what's going to happen right now, I am confident that even though people are selling their sets or think that the price are tanking, I think it's going to bounce back at some point. We have seen this 3 years ago when everybody thought the Premium, the old cards were worth nothing, and every price and every card was tanking to the lowest point we ever seen. Eventually it crawled back up. And I think this time the drop will be less significant because Bushiroad already announced supporting sets and tournament structure for every single format. Last time, we didn't have that. We didn't know about tournament structures, and we didn't know about sets themselves if the actual Premium format would get supported. Now we know that this is going to be the case, and we already knew how Premium survived the last couple of 3 years, or I shouldn't say survived, because it basically thrived. So, and that will probably still be the case for the coming foreseeable future, as I don't see it disappearing anytime soon. Same as with V Premium or the V Series. This will probably be a nice little format for people that like the gift marker system or just like the cards for what we have, and might actually get some reinsurgence when we get multiple V series or V collection sets that will bring back old favorite cards. And also another nice addition, which people are overlooking to some extent, because we now have a split in 3 different formats. This also means that our wallets will probably be less strained over time, as we know that Overdress, every single set, is going to get support for every single nation, which can be straining on anybody's wallet. But because we are going to get V collection sets in between, Premium collection sets in between, not everybody's going to play every single format. So players that are only going to play a singular format, or maybe 2 of the 3, will have a couple of months where they can recoup their spendings and save up money for the potential future support wave for their nation or whatever format they're playing. If this wasn't the case, we only had Premium and Standard, then probably Standard players will burn out in no time, because that means you had every month back to back support, and probably maybe 1 or 2 months off in a year, and that's it. Now we probably have 3 to 4 months in a year where we don't have to get new cards, and maybe even more depending if we get something like a reprint set or a festival collection, of course, and we get these collab sets that Japan gets, will mean that we have a month spare time, as I assume we're not going to get every single collab set, but maybe some. But of course, this is something that we have to see for ourselves, what type of impact this new system is going to be with the split in even more formats. As I am well aware that everybody is kind of afraid what this could mean for the game, as a lot of content creators already talked about the potential of splitting multiple formats way before Overdress actually announced this, that they were kind of hesitant about that they would accept that system. And now we are at that point. We are at this crossroad where this is going to be a new thing of the game. Is this going to be completely negative for the game? It's too soon to say. We don't know if this is going to be the case. And I also don't want to assume, because I see that see this being thrown in the community, that V Premium, yeah, they're going to keep it as for a while and then they're going to drop the entire format entirely and just will be Premium. I'm not so confident that's going to be the case, and it's also not really good to throw that out there, that rumor that they're going to do that, because Bushiroad already announced that they're going to support the format at least twice a year, and they already showcased a set. That's way more than they did back in the beginning of the reboot for actual Premium. And Premium is still around, and Premium will probably always be around, even if Japan isn't really playing, because Bushiroad acknowledged that the West is actually supporting the format. So, as far as I can see, this is going to be the new norm, and it has its upsides, but it also has its downsides. Depending on which side you're on, you can form your own opinion on this, but it will probably not change anything as for yet. But as you probably have guessed as the general tone of this video, I cannot be super excited about this, unlike what with the overtriggers, because I have a very positive opinion about overtriggers themselves. On this part, I'm basically very neutral. I can see the absolute downsides of having multiple formats, as they already struggled a bit with supporting 2 formats, but it was going a lot better at the end of the whole thing, even though we had this whole Corona issue. But I can also see the upsides with the fact that Premium, if I'm going to be very honest, will probably feel a lot more unique than what it did at the end of Standard or the end of the current V era, where decks were starting to look like a lot like Standard Plus. That will probably not happen as long as Bushiroad is gonna make unique support for V, unique support for Overdress, and unique support for Premium, as Premium will get basically a collection of all that support, which allows them to make some really weird interaction and combination play, which they might not design those unique cards for Overdress and V in the first place, as they mainly make those cards for their format and not specifically for Premium, depending on how they approach those cards themselves, of course. So yeah, honestly, we just have to wait and see the outcome of this, and my only advice that I can give to you guys is just don't worry all too much about this. Like, it's too early to think that this is gonna have a very negative impact in the game, as probably a lot of players will either stick to Standard and Premium and take V Series in between. That this is probably going to be a format that is going to be the secondary format for a lot of players. Like, I'm going to play Standard, but I also play V, I already have the cards. Yeah, why not play V as well, seeing as I only need probably 2 or 3 extra cards every single year, depending on how many cards are going to be in the V collection, and that's about it. It's very easy to maintain that format, unlike Overdress and Premium, that will probably be a lot harder to maintain in general. So I wouldn't worry all too much about that particular aspect. But that's basically everything for me, because I can ramble on this for forever and forever. So let me know your thoughts, your opinions about the split of the formats. I know this is quite a controversial topic in the community, as there are a lot of pros and cons and a lot of people in between that. So yeah, let me know your thoughts and suggestions and anything about this topic in the comment section down below. And I see you guys in the next video, which might be yet again another Overdress video or something completely different, because we still have some V Series stuff to go over, as V Series is still with us for a couple of more months. But with that said, I want to give a huge shout out to my Patreon supporters over at patreon.com/VanguardInsider. You guys are amazing. If you do want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, you can simply go to patreon.com/VanguardInsider and become a Patreon today. But with that said, I'm Mr. Time Leap, and I see you guys in the next one.